of hegemonic masculinity, which is the formulation of the term itself, and what are the major characteristics, tenets that hegemonic masculinity has. So, as a result of these researches that were carried out in the 1980s by different sociological researchers and scientists, the spotlight became, in terms of studying the uh, masculinity, the spotlight started falling on the dominant groups. Okay, and it was definitely used or focused on by the power structure researchers that were carried out by political sociologists. And it also looked at the pattern of practice that emerged from this dominant group, which allowed, as in principle, for men to dominate over women. One of the things that emerged was the fact that hegemonic masculinity was clearly differentiated from other forms of masculinity, especially the subordinated masculinity, which was considered as the exact opposite of hegemonic masculinity. You also need to understand that hegemonic masculinity was not based on numbers, because in actual practice, only a minority of men could really enact hegemonic masculinity. It is equivalent to how power functions in the society. Just like only a few or a handful of people in the society actually have power to bring about changes or to control the group, similarly, even among men, the actual men who practice hegemonic masculinity are very limited. Others only try to emulate the men who belong to the hegemonic masculine groups. Okay, so this was one of the keen observations that were made out through these researches that were conducted. It also established that even if it was practiced only by a small group of men, it definitely was normative, because everyone else actually tried to modulate the same kind of masculine behaviors, or tried to, or aspired to reach the hegemonic masculine behavior or roles. So it was definitely normative, and most men wanted to conform to this particular concept of masculinity. It also established that hegemonic masculinity is basically a masculinity which is the most honored way of being a man at that point of time in history. So it has definitely a social and historical background to how certain kind of masculinity gets accepted or established as the most prevalent or honored way of being a man. It also showed how this particular concept allows men to rule over other men, and generally the othered men would position themselves in relation to this hegemonic masculinity and would try to mimic it or ascribe or aspire to be the same kind of masculine person, or want to achieve the same kind of masculinity. All of this legitimized ideologically also the global subordination of women to men. Just like men through hegemonic masculinity controlled other men, it also allowed them to justify their control of women also. And within these two extreme masculinities, one is the subordinated masculinity and the hegemonic masculinity, there is a third group of masculinities that exists, which is intermediate. These are men who fall into the category of what we call as complicit masculinity. Now, these are men who receive the benefits of patriarchy but are not actively emulating or displaying hegemonic masculinity. Rather, they stand by this particular form of masculinity. They are the supporters of this masculinity, but not active participants or active promote, I mean, in the sense, active displayers of this strong masculine dominance. So, this particular kind of group of men are called as the complicit, who belong to the complicit masculinity. So, generally, hegemony among this group has led to also is also supported by heterosexual women. Okay, because of the number of different kinds of hegemonies that exist between the men, we have found, or the researchers have found, that heterosexual women also support these hegemonies. Okay, and one more thing that came to the forefront was also the fact that these hegemonies are not created through coercion, or they are not created through violence. These hegemonies are established through the approval or ascendancy that they achieve through culture, institutions, and persuasion rather than use of violence or coercion. Uh, this concept is abstract in nature and cannot actually be put down in terms of physical existence of it, because the concept is very very abstract, though physical signs can be seen of it, but as a concept it remains an abstract concept. Okay, and it is defined in terms of patriarchal gender systems that exist in society. uh, because of the fact that it keeps on changing according to the society it comes from, or even the time that it belongs to. One general assumption is also that hegemonic masculinity is also defined by the historical changes or influenced by the historical changes, and therefore are subject to change. So one group of men who may be hegemonically masculine today, or belonging to the hegemonic masculinity of that age in time and society, tomorrow may be upturned by another group of men who may assume the same position. Now, because of the fact that it is interchangeable, subject to change because of history, sociological differences, society's differences, cultural differences, ideological differences, it also brings in optimism to the idea that maybe, therefore, hegemonic masculinity can be overthrown. Okay, so this was the development and expansion of the term of hegemonic masculinity to include certain tenets or characteristics that would define this particular terminology. Now, in third one, we will be looking at its applications in various